Cloud, won't that be?
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so welcome again. Tell us where you're from if you're new to Truth Brigade. Then what's the worst bit of disinformation you've seen? That ectopic pregnancies can be cured without abortions, or yeah. Wow, I hadn't heard that, but that's pretty upsetting. Yeah. We've got somebody from Granite City. Good. Champaign. Good. New Coles County, Illinois. More new people. Ectopics can be transplanted. I haven't heard that one either. That one's interesting. Well, while you're responding to that, I just wanted to go over quickly the agenda so that you know what to expect. And Candace, if you could put that up, I'd really appreciate that. So we're just gonna take about a couple minutes in the beginning to go over, saying hi and also what we're gonna do. So first of all, just welcoming and norms. We have two speakers tonight, and I'm really excited about that. It's gonna be Carol Spindell from ACLU, and then also a speaker is Karina Kaplan from GQR. And you probably don't know what GQR is, but you will find out. After each speaker, we're going to have a little Q&A session, and we're going to handle that in the chat. Then we'll go on after our speakers. We're going to have announcements about things that are coming up that may be of interest to you from other groups. Then we're going to get into how to fight disinformation, and particularly approaches to messaging about abortion, and building a truth sandwich. And we'll end up with some resources and stuff that you can do. On next slide, please. The norms are, oh, yes, the meeting's recorded. You will be muted, and we're going to ask that you stay that way because, as I said before, there's about 200 of us who've signed up, and that's too many to be able to have discussions. The Q&A will be handled through the chat. So if you have a question, you probably know from other meetings, write ask in all big letters, all uppercase letters, and then put your question. We're going to be moderating that. There's somebody who's just there waiting to get your question, and the presenters will be given these questions, and we'll try to get as much of the questions as we can. Now, quickly, next one, please. Okay, who we are? Truth Brigade, Illinois. We're 3 co-leads. I'm Etta Worthington. Candace Davis is running the slides, and she's somewhere, and I think we could see her if she just wave, Candace. People will see you. And Linda Callis, who's there as well. And the interesting thing about the 3 of us, I think we've got everything covered. We're all 3 sort of retired. I'm a writer, so I got words. Linda's background is accounting, so she's got numbers. And Candace, well, she's got the law. So I think we got a good base here. And we seem to work together really well. Indivisible, if you're new to Indivisible, this is something that was formed right after the election when Trump was elected. It was a response to his election. They created this guide that they put up on Twitter. It was on Google Docs, and it went viral, and the rest is history. It became this big movement. People started groups. And so it's now thousands of local Indivisible groups with a mission to elect progressive leaders, rebuild our democracy, and yes, still to defeat the Trump agenda. We still have that. So Truth Brigade actually is something a little newer. National Truth Brigade started this to counter disinformation in August of 2020. And then in 2021, we started the state group because we wanted to work more with people and try and build skills with fighting disinformation, especially online. So I've been jabbering enough, and I'm 1 minute over. So I'm going to introduce Marcie Edelson Shaffer, who's from the Rural Illinois group, who is actually co-sponsoring this tonight. And she's going to introduce the speaker that we've got. Marcie, you're
Yeah,
muted.
sorry.
No problem.
So, thank you, Etta. Hi, my name is Marcie Edelson Shaffer. As Etta said, I'm part of the Indivisible Rural Illinois group, and I am going to introduce the first speaker. Champaign County chapter of ACLU is one of only 4 chapters of the ACLU in the state of Illinois. Carol Spindell has been an activist with Champaign County ACLU since 2002, serving for 6 years as president. She is currently director of communications, and she also works on police reform and as a liaison with the local branch of the NAACP. She is a nonfiction writer who taught nonfiction writing for nearly 30 years at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And her books include 2 books on living in the Ivory Coast, West Africa, and one about the controversy over sports mascots based on stereotypes of Native Americans. She has worked as an ally with Native organizations and with the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights to eradicate these stereotypes, particularly in schools. She will be speaking to us today about the ACLU's messaging on how the Roe decision affects those of us in Illinois. Please welcome Carol Spindell.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much to Marcie, who's a great ally for us and always helps us get our messages out on social media, and to Candace for inviting me. A shout out to my Urbana friends. I see a number of you on there, and to Esther, who's also a past president of our ACLU. So yeah, thanks. Maybe you could start with my first slide. We can go to my slides now. You don't really need to see me. I just want to explain a little bit about the ACLU structure and ACLU of Illinois. If you join the ACLU, you're a member both of the national ACLU, also the state ACLU, and if you have a local chapter, the nearest chapter. We have a particularly powerful state affiliate in Illinois with the legal staff in Chicago, but we also have 4 chapters of volunteer activists. So we're just volunteer activists. We have no paid staff, and that's what we do, work with the ACLU. We have the legal staff as a resource. And I would add, we also have a number of chapters at law schools in the state. I would ask you that if you join or renew your membership in the ACLU, please do it through ACLU of Illinois, because that way your nearest chapter will get your name and address. If you're near a local chapter, they'll find out about you. And for us as activists, this does make a difference because we are a membership organization. And if we go in to speak to our local senators about, repealing parental notice of abortion, or we go in to speak to the mayor and the police chief or whoever, for households. And frankly, that helps us get a hearing. So your membership does help us in our work, and we really appreciate it if you are a member, if you join and support our work. Thanks so much. So the ACLU, as you know, probably was pivotal in passing HB 40 in 2017, the Reproductive Health Act in 2019, and repealing parental notice of abortion, which took effect this June. We have a full-time legislative advocate who works on these kind of things, otherwise known as a lobbyist. Ours is a rock star. Her name is Kadeen Bennett. If you work with a reproductive rights organization in Illinois, you've probably met Kadeen. She did a really remarkable thing to get the Reproductive Health Act passed. She set up a sort of info room in the State House and had doctors and other people volunteering, and invited lawmakers to just come in and ask any questions they had. And I think this really helped in getting those questions answered with, factual information. And there's always so much disinformation going around, as you guys know. I have some information here about the laws in Illinois. You probably know all this, but you have the fundamental right to abortion, even if you're in state custody, control, or supervision, including in jail, prison, or under DCFS custody. If you're under 18, a clinic is not required by law to contact a parent or legal guardian if you're seeking abortion care services as of June 1st. Before that, we had the Judicial Bypass Project, of the ACLU, but we don't have to do that anymore, thank goodness. Yeah, so Illinois Medicaid and most private health insurance plans are required to cover abortion care. You might not know this part. Medical providers are not required to offer abortions, and some hospitals and clinics associated with some religious groups refuse to do them. However, under a law that we worked very hard to get passed, those groups have to give you information. If you go there, you might get taken to a hospital in an ambulance and need care. And if that care doesn't offer abortion, they are required by law to tell you that that is the care you need and where you can get it. So that's another law that we worked for. And if anybody thinks they don't get those rights, we urge them to contact us at the ACLU of Illinois. So in Illinois, you won't be forced to endure a waiting period, view an ultrasound, or listen to a state-sponsored lecture filled with misinformation. Okay. Next slide, please. We just had a virtual town hall on Monday, and the link is here if you want to watch that. There's the recording is up. Okay, I think that's all I have to say about that. Okay, so message number one that we are putting out the message that abortion remains legal in Illinois. Clinics remain open and patients should keep their appointments. People who want an abortion should feel free to reach out and make an appointment. So why are we leading with this message? It seems very obvious. One, there's a lot of anxiety out there. I don't think I need to explain that. But two, there's also a lot of disinformation, and you probably know about these so-called family planning centers and crisis pregnancy centers that put out a lot of disinformation. They could actually start putting out information to people saying that abortion is now illegal everywhere in the country. And many people might not realize that that's disinformation. They might not even go seek to try to get an abortion. And so that's one reason we're really putting this out there. And when, groups are affected differently by this, but when you think of young people and when you think of undocumented people, they might not be able to go out there and get accurate information. They might not realize that they're being given disinformation. So there is the In the Lies database where people can go to find these pregnancy centers that do disinform people. Interestingly enough, today I tried to go on the In the Lies database and I could not get on. I hope they have not been hacked, but there are a number of others too here that I give links to. So, okay, next slide, please. Okay, message number two. It's really critical that we continue to defend the protections we've put in place and extend new protections. And of course, this is obvious too. According to the 2019 Reproductive Health Act, restrictions on abortion in Illinois have to be evidence-based and in the best interest of the patient. So that is in our statute. Access to contraception is also safeguarded. Embryos have no independent rights in Illinois. And of course, you also have the right to refuse abortion or contraception, a very important right. So what kind of new measures, how could we extend protection? Our legal staff is consulting with providers. I think it's really important to talk to providers before we rush to sort of have ideas about what can be done. To see where they feel unsafe, where they feel that they need protection. We want to protect people who come into Illinois, and we want to protect providers working in Illinois. So one thing right away that we need to look at is expediting licensing of providers, because a lot of them are going to want to come work in Illinois from other places. And these licenses usually go state by state. So we're going to need to work on that. That's one thing. Without a supermajority in the legislature, as you probably know, measures don't go into effect until next June. So we have to look at things we could do quickly because we really need to act. And so we're trying to be responsible, we're trying to be responsive, and we're trying to come up with additional protections that would be constitutional, that would stand up in court. Next slide. Message number 3. As a haven state, of course, we anticipate that Illinois providers will see a significant growth in patients from other states. I've heard one figure that could increase 20 times. I don't know. That's just an estimate, of course. So we need to build support for those entities on the ground across Illinois that are helping patients from Illinois and other states. We at Champaign County ACLU, because of our location, we're recommending the Midwest Access Coalition, the Midwest Access Project, which provides training for medical students and providers, and of course, your local abortion providers, wherever you are in the state. All need, of course, an outpouring of support right now, but they also need sustained support. We need to keep supporting them. They need volunteers and, of course, organizations like Planned Parenthood and the ACLU that work for policy protections also, of course, need your support, and we appreciate your support. Next slide. Okay, I think there's one more. Can you go back one? Whoops. Yeah. Okay. Vote like your rights depend on it. Of course, we're only one election away from seeing our rights eroded. It could happen anytime. We can't do anything about the Supreme Court, the federal Supreme Court, but here in Illinois, our Supreme Court judges are elected, and that does give us a voice. And we have 2 who are up for election, 2 seats that will be, there'll be in 2 elections in the next election. So we need to maintain a pro-choice court. So we urge you to learn about judicial candidates and get information out there about that. That's really important. Of course, also express thanks to our legislators who vote on the right side of this issue, because people on the other side are bombarding them all the time with messages, and we need to keep on too. We need to thank them for voting the way they have. And of course, for people to really be able to make reproductive choices freely in this country, we need to also work for paid leave, paid sick leave, and better access to affordable daycare, just to mention a few things. Of course, that would be our vision. So thanks for all you do. Here's how to get in touch with us. If you live in the Champaign County area and would like to be on our local email address list to find out about our local events, email us at info@aclu-cu.org, and we will be glad to put you on our local list. Questions?
All right, thanks, Carol. This is Linda. I'm going to ask just a couple questions that showed up in the chat, and I have one that I didn't write in the chat. The one, I think you said this already, but somebody did ask about whether there's a waiting period for getting an abortion in Illinois, and I think the answer is no, correct?
No, there is no waiting period. There might be a waiting period to get an appointment, and that's a big concern in the future with so many people coming here.
Okay, and then for those that didn't see it in the Slack, in the chat, and this is not for you, Carol, but all of the slides and the resources that we're talking about tonight, they will be shared after the meeting and sent out. So, don't be writing furiously, listen to what the speakers are saying. And then there was another question, which probably a lot of people on this call could actually answer, but somebody asked about how the election of judges work. And I think basically I think most of the judges in Illinois, they do have to run for office and get elected, right? So it's going to be on the ballot in November. I'm not sure if we have any appointed judges. Sarah,
Some are appointed, some are elected. Yeah.
Okay. So there's both. Okay.
Yeah. But the Supreme Court is elected, and that's
okay.
really key.
Right. So that's the one. That's really important.
Yeah,
okay.
And depending where you live in Illinois, there might be other judges up for election.
Okay, so we need to pay attention to the judges, really important in November for people in Illinois. Another question is access to the abortion pill via US mail. I know there was something that the health department came out with. Can you explain that a little bit, Carol?
Sure. One thing that we were concerned about is that some of these states who want to severely restrict abortion, they might have tried to classify the ingredient that's in the abortion pill as a toxic substance or a dangerous substance. And then it could be banned from entering the state, just like, marijuana can't go out of a state where it's legal into a state where it's illegal. But the Department of Justice spoke very clearly Friday, and we're very, happy about that. And they said, no, this is a decision that is made by the FDA, what substances are safe for the American people to use medically, and a state cannot reevaluate this. So they would go to court to challenge that, if any is what they're saying, if any state did try to do that. So that was a very clear directive, and that's very good, we think.
Okay. Yeah, I'd heard that the other day, so that was good. So this question, well, actually, this gets into a little bit too much about national, so I won't go to that. There was a question about, you talked about a deadline of 2023, and I think there was a little bit of confusion, June 2023. I think that was just talking about when something can go into effect. Is that what you meant by that?
Right. If the legislature would pass additional protections for abortion, but they wouldn't have a supermajority on the vote, then they would not take effect until June 2023. That's just the way that's just the way it works. So
Okay.
We'll hopefully try to come up with some things that we could get a supermajority on and get passed immediately.
Okay. And just to, this is not a question for you, but somebody noted that Liz, I think it's Rochford, I might have said it wrong, in the 2nd district, and Mary Kay O'Brien in the 3rd district are pro-choice candidates. But the main thing everybody should do is look at what district you're in, who you're voting for, and look up the judges. Just be really careful with this one. And then my question was, and this is well beyond Illinois, but I've always wondered about this. Is there a concern? Because obviously religious organizations have in the past and continue to be very involved with healthcare, right? That's like a mission for them. Is there a concern that we could eventually have so many of the religious right running things that there wouldn't, if we give them that ability not to do an abortion or to pick and choose what they want to cover and what they can serve, is there a concern that eventually you wouldn't have enough hospitals that will do abortions? Or is that just not going to happen?
I don't know. That's a little out of my bailiwick to predict healthcare. I'm not a healthcare expert, but I think there are a lot of really committed providers who are not religious, who work through Planned Parenthood and other clinics that are really committed to women's reproductive health care. So I would just hope for the best. I don't know. That's an interesting thought. I hope it wouldn't happen.
All right. So I think that was all the questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And our next speaker is going to be talking about disinformation about abortion and, well, disinformation generally online, but specifically about where our focus is tonight. I know when I grew up, my mother had a way of treating disinformation. It was making me put some soap in my mouth and washing the lie out of my mouth, I think it was. Well, fortunately, Karina Kaplan has a different approach to fighting disinformation. She's an analyst at GQR, that's a public opinion research and consulting firm. She focuses on the intersection of public opinion and social listening research with a specialty in counter disinformation research and messaging. And I'm not sure if that means that Karina spends all day on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. We'll find out maybe, but I know that she works with hundreds of advocacy groups to train key progressive players on inoculating themselves and voters against mis and disinformation and online propaganda. And Karina advises Indivisible National Truth Brigade, which is how we were able to have her come. So Karina, thank you very much. We're looking forward to what you're going to tell us tonight.
Great, thank you, Etta, and thank you for having me. And I just want to shout out Carol for doing a really wonderful job in her presentation and also answering all of those great questions. I think it's really important going forward as there is mis and disinformation about the access to abortion, that we know people who are able to give those really clear answers. So I just want to say, Carol, you did a really amazing job. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Let me do that. Been on Zoom for 3 years and still doing this.
Really?
All of us. Okay, great. I hope everyone can see my screen. So like Etta said, I work at a firm that really spends a lot of our time on the scary parts of the internet so that people like you really don't have to. I also work really closely with the Indivisible Truth Brigade, really helping generating messages all the time to counter disinformation. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of the online conversation that we're seeing right now in reaction to the SCOTUS Dobbs decision. And then I'll end with some guidance on how we can counter those harmful narratives as well, because it's really important to know what's going on the internet so we can be able to counter it, but it's also important to know how we can do so in the most effective way. So we're really seeing a substantial volume of conversation, obviously, around abortion and the decision online. Just as a point of comparison, we saw over 12 million mentions on Twitter alone related to abortion or Roe or Dobbs just on Tuesday. Which is a lot. You can see how much higher that volume is than other topics like Ukraine and the economy, which happen to be two of the other really big trending topics over the last few months in the US. And it'll be really interesting over the coming days to see if abortion conversation is able to maintain its momentum. We in the research space call this topic momentum. If they can maintain this larger spike of conversation for a longer period of time, that's topic momentum, or it could just spike and go away. So we'll see if that continues its momentum or not, because it does sort of seem like it's already dropping off online, which again is really important as we're going forward to think about how we can continue that conversation and make sure it stays in the mainstream, because it is really easy for it to drop off online if people aren't talking about it. As is often the case with breaking news, the information environment around the decision is really largely being driven by mainstream outlets and some progressive outlets, including the New York Times, the Huffington Post, which is very good because it means it's not being driven by right-wing sources. 14 of the top 20 articles shared to social media, which is in this case, Facebook and Twitter, since June 24th, are coming from mainstream and progressive outlets, which is a pretty good indication that right-wing outlets are not driving this kind of conversation. The social media landscape as well is similarly helpful. Across channels, top posts are being driven primarily by progressive leaders and influencers in mainstream news organizations like Michelle Obama, Halsey and Lizzo, who are two celebrities, and then other politicians like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Per usual, Facebook is a platform that is most right-leaning. They have a really big infrastructure, both of their own systems and strategies from bad actors, and also the platform itself encourages them. That makes this more right-leaning and more balanced. Screenshots here pull from all of these posts across channels, but it's looking pretty good for progressives online right now. It doesn't mean the right-wing narratives aren't breaking through, but of the top most engaged posts, progressives are doing pretty well on platforms like Twitter and Instagram, a little bit less so on Facebook. It is notable that Twitter is very progressive, as progressive accounts really tend to perform better there generally. So that's not particularly a surprise, but it is good that we're doing okay on Facebook and Instagram as well. Just to say, this is pretty common for breaking news events. Progressive accounts often lose interest and engagement over time. So at the beginning, it's pretty average for progressive and mainstream accounts to be driving this top content. Bad actors are often, using unverified accounts to share their content, which would not be picked up in these verified content data polls. So it's important that progressives and progressive activists like all of you and us, stay involved in their action over the coming weeks and make sure that this doesn't just start to fade away into the background, but instead stays a really main and important topic of conversation. So I'm going to spend a few minutes going through 4 of the themes of the right-wing narratives and disinformation narratives that we're seeing online. These, opposition anti-choice accounts are saying a lot of different things, and so I just want to highlight them. First, as you'd expect, there's a lot of general praise for the idea of overturning Roe, but this is an opportunity for anti-choice groups, re-up their usual talking points, a lot of which is actually rooted in misleading and false scientific information. that they've been pushing for years, if not decades. This has been a really long time that this misleading and false information about abortion itself and the science behind it has been pushed. They've really been galvanized around this for years and have shared many false medical claims widely, but they're really feeling a lot more emboldened now than they have in the past. Many of these posts are, rooted in religion, bringing the decision back to religious reasons, which again, comes back to some misleading themes about that as well. While others claim the decision is a win for women, claiming that it's really actually protecting and helping women, which again, comes back to a lot of misleading and false premises that are not actually true. At the same time, a lot of right-wing influencers are falsely claiming the decision actually reflects modern science, which is also untrue. Polling shows that this message actually works the best with people who don't believe in abortion, which is scary because it's actually on the premise of something that is completely false. They uplift misleading studies and facts about the beginning of life, ignoring actual testimony and posts from doctors as well. And they're really using these claims to downplay the impact that abortion, has on women and the lack of access will have on women, especially claiming it's not going to impact life-threatening procedures, including ectopic pregnancies, miscarriages, or other procedures like that. They're claiming that these kind of laws are not going to impact that, which is certifiably not true and has already been an issue in a lot of states that have already banned it. Stories are really already coming out about women who have tried to get these procedures and have been turned away and things like that. And so this is just, certifiably false, but they're claiming it like it is true to claim that it reflects modern science. Third, bad actors are trying really hard to claim progressives are violent. Immediately following the decision, right-wing bad actors claimed that progressive protests would turn violent, some alluding, to the protests for racial justice in 2020 as evidence of progressive tendencies in the past. Notably, protests over the weekend were not violent at all, but bad actors claimed they were anyway. They amplified, progressive politicians like AOC calling for action and demonstrations, albeit peacefully, but they, would say that that's not true. And some used very specific incidences of very minor aggression. There was one example in Phoenix, Arizona, as a big emblem of the entire movement, which again, undermines its credibility, even though it's not true at all. They're also centering an extremist group called Jane's Revenge, mirroring the sort of Antifa BLM conversation where they picked one group to focus on attention on, regardless of how real that group actually is or how much impact they're actually having, claiming it represents this broader progressive movement. So they're cherry picking these very small examples to claim there is this much larger, theme of violence, which is just not happening at all. And then finally, especially over the past few days, we're seeing a lot of attention calling Democrats and progressives hypocrites and claiming they're overreacting. Bad actors are accusing progressives of being hypocritical for believing women should be in control of their own bodies, cross state lines for abortions, and protest however they please. They're claiming it's violently. By comparing these actions to vaccine and mask mandates, Kyle Rittenhouse crossing borders, and January 6th. So all of these incidents are clearly very different. Those three have very little in common, but they're using it to push this broader narrative. To me, it's like comparing apples and oranges. It's just completely different. So it's really important to not engage with these narratives at all. They're also claiming that there actually won't, be change in blue states because people who want abortions can still get them there. Therefore, it doesn't really matter, which is again not true because it's still affecting women and other people who need abortions in states that are, redder or where it will be illegal right now or in the coming months. So those are the four top narratives we're seeing, but going forward, we really anticipate, more harmful narratives emerging, especially around access to abortion. One poll that we've been seeing, shows a third of people in each state incorrectly state their own state's abortion laws. So it'll be imperative that we continue to share credible information about how and where to get an abortion in each state. We'll also see the continued downplaying of this decision on women, especially as both social and mainstream media attention wane, as we saw in that chart at the beginning. And then lastly, abortion conversation can really be nuanced and complicated, and bad actors are going to try to deflect from their real goal of this nationwide ban by trying to, pit Democrats against Democrats or progressives against progressives, saying that we believe different things. And we need to make sure we're always coming back to that same narrative that these bad actors are really out here trying for a federal ban. And the nuance doesn't matter as much because this is really what they're trying to do. Okay, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time quickly talking about some best practices for responding to these threats, because it's definitely a scary media landscape out there. And in a lot of ways, it might feel like we're losing or any of that, but I want to say that there are really important ways that we can push back on this harmful disinformation. So the number one rule with disinformation is not to amplify disinformation. One of the trickiest parts of countering disinformation on social media is that the way we interact with content actually helps spread that content further. The way we spend time online is currency, is how I like to think about it. Our attention is their business model, and therefore our views, our clicks, our comments, our shares are really, really valuable, and we want to spend that currency wisely. So we want to spend that currency on things that we want to push forward. So when we're talking about not engaging with disinformation, the opposite would be pushing out the counterweight, which is engaging with conversations and content that we really do want to spread further. It's, using our own currency as a trusted and local messenger within our communities to share content that we want people to see, and really making sure that we're pushing things that we want people to see instead of things that we don't want people to see. We also don't give a ton of messaging advice, but we do have some overarching recommendations when it comes to counter disinformation messaging. For those of you who have been on a Truth Brigade call, I'm sure you know exactly what this truth sandwich method is, but the truth sandwich is a method created by George Lakoff, and we, with the Truth Brigade, have tweaked it a little bit to be more specific towards counter disinformation messaging. And the basic tenet of the Truth Brigade, the truth sandwich, not the Truth Brigade, the truth sandwich, is that our brains remember what we hear first and most often. Therefore, it is important to start and end with positive messaging. So first, it's really important that messages lay common ground. You'll see in this example on the screen, I've pulled them from a campaign we did about the leak of the Roe decision, which was about 2 months ago at this point. The first sentence says something along the lines of, most of us are deeply against the government taking away our rights. Regardless if this is about the Dobbs decision, about abortion, that's a statement that most people can agree on. Next, we focus on undermining the messenger. It's important to really not be aggressive when we're doing this or make other people feel like they're on defense. So instead of focusing on the message, we focus on the messenger and their motivations behind whatever they're saying. So those who packed the Supreme Court with anti-Roe v. Wade extremists know how unpopular it is. That's also based in truth. We know that it's unpopular. We know that the Supreme Court's popularity has really dropped in the last few years. And then lastly, we return to the truth with a proactive message. So they want to distract. We must stay laser focused on the fight so we won't go back. So we're doing a good job there of layering, that middle sentence of undermining the credibility of the court and the things that they're doing with positive messaging on both sides. And then lastly, before I go, I just want to say that there are some really specific messaging in social media tips that we like to give out, especially around Roe. We've been working with a lot of really great pro-choice groups like NARAL and Planned Parenthood, and they've done a really good job at compiling some really good messaging actions. And so just going to run through these really quickly. It's important that we're emphasizing the unique and personal nature of abortion decisions. This is the decision of a woman themselves. And so we want to make sure that people know this is a personal decision. It's not something that the government should be involved in. It's really important to emphasize the value of women having control over their own bodies and their own decisions. It's really great to utilize content made by other progressive groups. So Planned Parenthood and Ultraviolet are two of the social media toolkits I've been leaning on a lot. I think they've done a really good job at talking about this. And that goes along with we need to amplify each other's content. The more that we all interact with each other's content, the further it spreads online. A share means a lot more than a like on Facebook. And if you like a post, it's going to be in someone else's feed. And the more we interact with each other, the more eyeballs are going to be on our content that we want people to see, pushing that further than just our own echo chambers or our own silos where our conversation is. So we want to make sure we're amplifying each other's content. It's also really important that we're only sharing content from credible sources. There's a lot of content online right now. There's a lot of personal stories, and those are great, but we want to make sure that they're coming from credible sources, whether that's people we know or mainstream news outlets or things like that, where we can really actually verify where this is coming from, because it's going to be really, really easy for misinformation to spread if we're just sharing things without knowing where it's coming from. And then lastly, directing people to credible sources also means sending them to websites or organizations who have a lot more information. If you or anyone you know needs an abortion or is looking for one, abortionfinder.org is a really great resource. And the Department of Health and Human Services also just put out this website called reproductiverights.gov, where they outline what the rights are in each state and can really help give more information as well. So it's just really important that we're sharing these credible and verifiable sources in order to counter disinformation, to make sure people have actually true information and can inoculate themselves against harmful content. So that is all I have, and I'm happy to stick around for questions, but thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karina. There were a couple questions that I want to ask that were in the chat.
Yeah, please.
You've kind of focused on this in that last slide, but somebody was asking about the best sources for messaging. And it sounds like you were kind of we're going to have some links to things that are or things that we think are helpful messaging, but it sounds like you were saying that Planned Parenthood and then Ultraviolet are two places where you could find some good messaging on the topic. What is Ultraviolet?
Yeah, great question. So Ultraviolet is another organization that is pro women's rights, essentially, and they work a lot with abortion rights as well. So they're, all about countering misogyny in the media and on social media. They work really closely with, trying to regulate the platforms and things like that. So I have a toolkit from them, and I also have a toolkit from Planned Parenthood that I'm happy to share with you all. Those are specifically about social media content. It's important to, share content that is real and authentic on social media. So I just encourage whatever you post to come from your own voice. But everything that we're talking about with social media can also be translated offline as well into real conversations in person too.
Okay. Somebody was asking about, I'm going to go a little bit backwards, given an example of Undermining the Messenger, which I think you did in that sandwich. And we're also going to go through another truth sandwich a little bit later. So, but the idea is basically to, I think, kind of ask a question about the messenger and just indicate that they're not necessarily the best source for whatever reason. So that's the hardest part, because you don't want to be super mean, but it's just something that you're trying to get the person reading it to question why the false information is being shared by that person. I think I know what your answer to this is going to be, but somebody asked is if Facebook is an important tool for fighting disinformation.
Facebook is absolutely an important tool in fighting disinformation. Actually, if you think about who was on each platform in the US, only 23% of US Americans are actually on Twitter. And I think we sometimes think of that as a place where most conversation is happening, but it's actually only under a quarter of Americans. Instead, most Americans really do spend their time on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. It's upwards of 70 or 80% for some of those. So super important to spend time on Facebook, encountering disinformation there. That all being said, a lot of their policies actually are really bad at mitigating disinformation. And so it's really important to call them out as well as a platform for not doing a good job at making sure people aren't reading or seeing disinformation as well. So countering disinformation on Facebook could not be more important in my opinion.
Okay. And I don't know if you even know about this or you can answer this, but somebody was mentioning that the Women's March organization is encouraging direct action, which would end up with people getting arrested. Do you think that plays into, does that play into the right to say, see, they're getting arrested, they're violent? I mean, what do you think about that tactic? And I know that's been used in the past. I think it was used a lot in the civil rights too, and it worked.
Yeah, I personally think that we should be advocating for nonviolent protests, especially because, like you said, this actually does play into the right's hand. One of the narratives that they're really pushing is that, we as progressives are pushing violence in these protests, which, like I said earlier, also is not at all true. It's very, very little acts of aggression that happened over the weekend compared to some other, right-wing attacks that we've seen, including January 6th. And so I think it's really important to stay really peaceful and nonviolent in these protests. I'm also not totally sure that Women's March is doing that. I'll look into it, but I know that I don't think that that's something that they would be advocating. They might be saying that maybe in an unfair way, people were arrested at protests, but I can't imagine they were actually advocating for that. But I can look into it as well. Thank you for bringing it to my attention.
And it may be more trespassing type things than actual anything,
Yeah. I would say let's try and be as lawful as possible in this. I think we have, power in numbers. Over 55% of this country believes in not repealing Roe v. Wade. And so we got to take our strength in that.
Okay. And then Gary, you were trying to type the question. If you want to unmute yourself and ask it, because I think your keyboard was a problem. Gary Rickelman. Gary, you still here? Okay, it sounds like he wasn't. He was trying to ask a question, but his keyboard was, so it was hard to tell what it was.
I understand we're all having tech issues these days.
Yeah. And then another question that was just asked is, do we need to, and we're actually going to talk about this at a later True Sandwich. So, but from your perspective, do we need to also include the concern about the LGBTQ community and the impact this could potentially, the risk they're at, given what's been said in the opinions?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think the answer is like, yes, absolutely. I think in two different ways. I think we need to acknowledge that this is going to have a really big impact on women and other people seeking abortions right now. And that impact is going to be immediate. And we need to acknowledge that and understand that. And also understand that this could possibly set precedent for things later, including, Overfell and other cases like that. And so I think it's absolutely worth, thinking about and pushing out that conversation, especially with people who aren't thinking about it in those terms. But I think it's also important to realize, the immediate effects it's going to have right now as well, while also acknowledging, this is a really important conversation, but we're seeing attacks on the LGBT community all over the country right now anyway, in education, in school boards, in, different laws across states. And so abortion is one part of the conversation, but it's part of a much larger right-wing playbook that is sort of trying to undermine all of our rights across the board as well.
Okay. All right. I do have a question actually for the co-leaders, anybody who can answer it. So, because I don't really know the answer to this. Somebody was asking, first of all, do judges have campaign websites? And I did actually find one for Mary Kay O'Brien. So the answer is yes. But the second question, which I didn't have time to research, so if anybody knows of our group, how do you find out if they are pro-choice? It seems like that might be a little harder to figure out with a judge. Anybody have?
Well, let me, it's Candace. They actually, I don't think you found a campaign website because judges, Supreme Court judges aren't supposed to be campaigning. So it's really hard to find out exactly what's going on. Most of the time you find out through their donors or through other people who support them. So it's not always easy to find out exactly where they're coming from. I don't know if anybody has a better idea of places to look. You just kind of have to ask friends, ask around, see what's out.
Okay, yeah, it does have her name and it says for judge, so somebody else might have developed it for her. So, okay, all right, thank you. I think that was all our questions.
Thank you
all for having me.
very
Thanks for
much.
everything you're doing.
Thanks for coming very much. Appreciate it so much. Thank you. So folks, we're going to have a quick commercial break. We're going to make it really quick. There are some things that are coming up that we'd like you to know about. And I think either Marcie or Sarah may have something from the rural group to mention.
Yeah, Sarah, do you mind if I mention those things? Okay. So first of all, I'm gonna put the links to these in the chat. The rural group, Indivisible. Hey, Sarah, one thing you could do is, can you put the link to sign up for the listserv in the chat? That would be awesome. Okay, the Indivisible Rural Illinois group meets the first Thursday of every month, and we have a meeting on July 7th, and it's going to be on zeroing in on the young and vulnerable, how right-wing organizations mobilize high school and college students. And they're specifically, it's going to be about Turning Point USA and Young America's Foundation. And for anybody who knows any of the people in Indivisible Illinois, Sarah Bingaman and Jim McGrath are going to be talking about this, because they've had a lot of a lot of interactions with these particular kind of people, and so I've done a lot of research. So and it's good. It should be really good and very disconcerting at the same time. Anyway, I just put a link to it in the chat. Rural meeting, rural 7. Okay. Okay, so and then the next thing, there's only one other thing I want to talk about, and it's as many of you know, Indivisible Illinois has a phone bank on Saturdays in collaboration with Indivisible Milwaukee, and it is on hiatus for a few weeks since we were we're working on things that were pre primary election, asking people to get vote by mail ballots. We are going to pivot to candidates. We already have 3 candidates who are interested in putting their open virtual phone banks, up for people to call on. And it's still going to be every Saturday from 4 to 5:30 starting on July 9th. And we really direly need volunteers. Basically, we're calling it the Indivisible Illinois, Indivisible Milwaukee Rockin' Candidates Phone Bank, and you can choose to call one Saturday or a whole bunch of Saturdays, but from 4 to 5:30 starting on July 9th every Saturday until right before the election. So we all want to get progressive candidates elected, and this is the way to do it. And if you are a candidate who is interested, who can get an open virtual phone bank done and would like it included, please put your email in the chat to me, and I will connect with you. But we really darling need volunteers to call these. So thank you.
Great, appreciate it. I know that the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Group of Indivisible Illinois is having a planning meeting tomorrow night, Thursday night at 7 p.m. and everyone's welcome. And Candace or someone, can you put that link, or Lenny put the link in the chat for that one? Also, go ahead.
I just put that one in, and I just wanted to remind you that Cameron wanted some time.
Right. One more thing. If you want to get the Connecting for Action weekly update from Indivisible Illinois, the statewide group, that we'll also have a link to do that, and you'll know more of what's happening in all of our groups, all of our special groups. But I do believe Cameron is here. He's our regional coordinator from Indivisible National. And Cameron has a meeting that's coming up that he wants us to know about too. Can you tell us about it, Cameron?
Yes, hello everybody, and sorry that I was late. I was also on the National Rural Call, and we ran quite late this evening. So thank you so much. I only need a couple of minutes of everybody's time. So as Adam mentioned, we do have a really exciting event coming up nationally. It is the National Indivisible 2022 Virtual Convention. This is a really great 3-night series of events where starting on the 12th, 13th, and then again on the 14th, each night at 6 p.m. Central Time, we will be getting on Zoom together and hearing from some phenomenal speakers, including the current executive director from Planned Parenthood, as well as one of the original founders of the Jane Project. And so we are having some phenomenal guest speakers, and it's also like really in the moment with the people who we have. Night 1 is going to focus on messaging. Night 2 is going to focus on recruitment. Night 3 is going to focus on kind of bringing all of that together. It is, again, 3 nights. Each night is a little long, I know, but this is a really great opportunity for everybody, members, leaders, even people who have not signed up for Indivisible yet, to come on, see what we're all about, and join. The Indivisible Truth Brigade is going to have a really big presence on night 2, where we are going to have a whole presentation done by Jody, myself, and the other Truth Brigade team members. Seeing as normally that Wednesday would be where we would be having our actual Truth Brigade call nationally, instead we're building it into this convention. So I will have the link for that in the chat here in just a second for all of you. And it is kind of a strange process. It's going to take you to log into your Zoom account. So you will have to log in before you can register. And that's a security thing. I know that you're probably not used to that. It's okay if you don't have a Zoom account and you just sign in as a guest normally. So with this, you can just sign up for a free Zoom account if you don't already have one. And again, that's just for security reasons. because we are hoping to get close to 1,000 people to join for this event. So it will be a really big 3 nights. The other thing that I wanted to quickly just mention, so I know I am as devastated as everybody else on this phone call, the Zoom call, about what happened last Friday with the Supreme Court. I know that indivisibles all around the country have been staging their own protests and actions, and we want to support that here at Indivisible National. So there's 2 other links that I will have in the chat. It's all gonna be one big message, and then I will make sure that I share this information with Etta and Candace to include in the follow-up email to all of you. But we have put together a whole deck of resources for you as far as holding your own response protest to the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And we, Indivisible National, have signed on as partners with Planned Parenthood for the upcoming mobilization happening the second weekend of July, on July 9th. So this is a really great set of resources that if you, maybe in particular for people who live in smaller or more rural communities, or maybe you don't have an active event already up and running, this will help you get your own going. And even if there's just 1 or 2 of you, that can still make a really big difference. So that is there. The last thing is that if you did run your own event, if you are going to be running an event, in particular focusing on the response to the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, we want to help you pay for that. So if you had to have a venue rental fee, if you bought waters, if you had signs printed or had to buy sign making materials, Indivisible National will give up to $200 in reimbursements for each group for each event through the middle of the month. So keep your receipts. The link to that reimbursement form will be there in the chat as well. So those are my announcements. I'm gonna drop those links right now.
Great. Thank you so much, Cameron. And it's always great to know that we have a direct connection with Indivisible National, and Cameron hangs out with us a bit, and it's really supportive. So thank you. And he's part of the National Truth Brigade, so he's really in on everything that we're doing here with that. So Candace, if you could quickly go back to our slides. I think we're through the announcements, is that correct?
Yeah.
We are. I've decided we are. Okay, now, I think you came because you want to know how to talk or post about it. And so Karina gave us a whole bunch of information, but we're going to kind of show you slowly, maybe painstakingly, how we come up with a good post. So we'll look at the truth sandwich in more detail and what we're trying to do, and focus on abortion messaging. Next slide, please. Now, what we're trying to do for sure is counter disinformation by sharing accurate information. Now, really important, we are not trying to change the minds of the far right. We're giving up on them. We're not going to change their minds, but we're focused on trying to get the persuadable people, the people who maybe are starting to ask questions. So we share for information on social media and face-to-face using this approach and connecting with people, having commonalities, pointing out the information, and then share our vision of how it should be. Important things, don't click on the bad guys. I don't know, I'm on Facebook a lot. I do Twitter too, but never click on the bad guys. Don't use language of the disinformers. If you name it, you spread it. Respond authentically and personally. We often give out sample posts, but it's really great if people take them and make them a little bit their own. Don't argue. Engage with common values. And don't just try and give them facts. No, instead raise questions and share with persuadable people. Use all the social media platforms, and we use Truth Brigade hashtag and also Truth Brigade Illinois as a hashtag. So Linda.
Okay, let's talk about the truth sandwich, which is, it's been talked about already, but this was originally they want to call it invented, or the idea came from George Lakoff, who is a author, linguist, and philosopher. So we're going to give a thank you to him. Go to the next slide and talk through. Again, you've heard this already, but I'll go through it. The top of the sandwich is a shared value. So example here is no matter our race, background, or zip code, we value freedom in this country. So the idea is that we all, get everybody to, immediately say, oh yeah, I can agree with that. The middle of the sandwich, that's the villain and the disinformation. This is the hardest part of the sandwich. Again, you want to make sure that you're identifying, what they're doing wrong or what the disinformation is. You don't want to necessarily use their terminology. The right is very good at picking a couple words and it just goes on and has a life. Critical race theory would be a perfect example. But you still want to make sure people understand what you're talking about. So this example is, and yet the Supreme Court just took away a fundamental freedom based on faulty history and reasoning. So we're basically questioning their opinion because they did not use, they were using faulty history and reasoning. So it will now be harder and more dangerous to obtain an abortion, and it may be out of reach for the most vulnerable. So we're getting to the point of, the Supreme Court did something that they should not have done. So we're kind of naming them as the villain. And then the last part is the shared vision, kind of a call to action or a way to think about the future. So we need to vote to elect representatives. That's the call to action, who will protect our freedoms and create the country we envision, where the rights of all people are protected regardless of sex, race, or economic status. And again, when you do these, you want it to kind of be in your own voice, but this is what the sandwich looks like. Okay, next slide. So it's just another example. You come up with common ground. You try to disrupt this disinformation or question the villain, and then dream of a better future. That's your vision. Okay.
So with regard to abortion, our position is we have to seize the storyline. We've got to make it absolutely clear that the majority of Americans support safe, legal, and accessible abortion care. That's the truth. And someone said this is one way to sum it up, and I think it's a good one. This is about our freedom to decide whether, when, and with whom to have a family. And there we're focusing on the core values of family and freedom. And that's the story we want to tell.
And the idea is that we want to teach critical thinking. So, that's where it gets into, if you just give too many facts, it might not be helpful. It's really, you want them to start questioning who they're getting their information from. So, giving it some more thought is what we're focused on. And an interesting, if you go to the next slide.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm trying.
That's okay. So a recent MIT study, not sure how recent it is exactly. We've had this slide for a
2
little
months ago.
85% of disinformation is shared inadvertently. So the idea is that not only are we out there, fighting disinformation, some of it is out there purposely wrong, but a lot of people just do it without realizing, and we can be guilty of that. So we're trying to get people, whatever the disinformation is, to really critically think about, are you getting a good source? Does this make sense? Maybe do some research before sharing.
Okay, so on top of the truth sandwich, we are also trying to fight the racism and classism that divides us all, and using race-class narrative in our posts. So this may sound a little complicated, and what we have to do is include that. In fact, you may have noticed some of the posts we've mentioned and some that we will be, we're talking about it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, what race, what zip code, whatever. So we're trying to point out that this is for everybody. We're trying to mobilize around the connections between racial divisions and economic hardship, and we need to call out racism for what it is. It's a divide and conquer strategy, creates distrust, and undermines belief in government. And clearly race and economics play an important part in this change in availability of abortion. Next slide. So one of the people that we've been getting a lot of good information from, you may have heard of her, Anat Shankar Osorio. And she does a lot of work with various progressive groups about messaging. She does a lot of testing about words and what words make a difference. She actually works internationally, and she had a couple of successful abortion messaging campaigns in Ireland and in Argentina, both Catholic countries. In Ireland, the focus was on the 3 C's, and you may be surprised. The C's are care, compassion, and change, not the other C you might think about. In Argentina, the focus was on rural areas and messaging about how legalized abortions would save thousands of lives. And those were very effective because legislation was passed that legalized abortion in those companies and in those countries. Next slide. One of the things we are told, and it's really hard for us probably, do not use the term choice. And there's a reason for it. That's associated with like, oh, am I going to buy this or that? Consumer choices. It's seen as frivolous or maybe selfish. So sometimes it doesn't make sense to us, but with the testing that experts in messaging are doing, they're finding out what is making a difference in that persuadable group. Next slide. Okay, we're going to show a short video, and I'd like you to pay particular attention. I know you're almost asleep now, but wake up. There are different scenarios here. Can you notice what they are? It's not a long video. What are the different scenarios, and how are they placed? You might even want to make some notes on that. And how about the use of the ideas of care, compassion, and change? Then and this is what I'd like to hear in the chat, if you could put, which one has the most impact on you? Okay, let's see the video. Don't have audio.
Candace, try unmuting yourself.
The thing they planned to have that wasn't right for them. That comes too soon after giving birth. That would mean starting over. Someone you love might need an abortion someday. You can help ensure that when the day comes, they can get the care they need.
Support you.
Candace, since we missed the audio on the first, can we play it once more? And I want people to notice again what the different things that are mentioned here.
Someone you love may struggle with a pregnancy.
Thank you.
A pregnancy they longed for that slipped away. Someone they were counting down the days to meet that couldn't survive. A pregnancy that would endanger providing for the children they already have. A pregnancy they were too sick to carry. But they never planned to have. That wasn't right for them. That comes too soon after giving birth. That would mean starting over. Someone you love might need an abortion someday. You can help ensure that when the day comes, they can get the care they need.
Support you.
Okay, so any thoughts about what has most impact on you? Put it in the chat. Marianne said, I don't think we're playing again. Favorite word is compassion. Care they need. Gloria, I noticed that too, and that really says it without like hitting you over the head. But yes, it's about health care. It's care. positive rather than negative. Yes, very emotionally connected. So, you know, this is a great thing to share coming too soon after birth. Yes. This is a great thing to share online. And we have a toolkit that's available here. It's from Gutsy Media that created this, the Someone You Love campaign. And in this toolkit, they also give you a bunch of posts that you can actually connect with it and then attach the video, or put the link to the video. It will show up right immediately in your feed. So this is something that I've been just, I think is extremely effective, and it's something that would be good if we all of it share and come up with some different posts to use to share with it. Next slide. Oh wait, but Candace, were you supposed to say that? I think you were.
It's a great video, share it.
Yeah. Okay, Linda, you're going to talk about words, how important they are, and what ones to use.
So this is again some suggestions from people who understand what works with people and what doesn't, and what's accepted or what's more inflammatory that you don't want to use. So don't say abort a child. It's an end of a pregnancy. You don't want to say abortion is illegal. What you want to say is it's legally restricted, because it should be legal. Do not call the doctor or whoever an abortionist. It's a healthcare provider. It's not a baby, it's an embryo or fetus. Conscientious objector is really a provider refusal. So that's what we want to call it. They're refusing to provide healthcare for somebody. Get rid of is not a good choice of words. Choose not to move through a full pregnancy. Keep the baby, don't use that. Continue the pregnancy. That's really you're continuing the pregnancy until birth. Late term abortion, boy, they have made that one a political football. It's really abortion in the second and third semester, and there's reasons why they happen. Instead of prevent abortion, what we want to do is prevent unwanted pregnancies. That's really the goal.
And what we've got here, we're running out of time, so I'm not going to run through these, but we're sending out the slide. So we've got some social media posts about abortion that include the race class narrative, no matter our gender or zip code. We believe people should have good health care. So this is one that goes great with that video. It's more important than ever for our elected leaders to protect someone you love. There's that one. Here's a couple other sample ones, and I encourage you to copy them and use them. This one, we've all been through a lot this last couple of years. It's taught us anything. It's that you never know when someone you love might need your help someday. And calling out the bad guys, but some lawmakers seem cruel and unyielding. We need to make changes. We need to care. Watch and share this video. And it's trying to get people to come at it from a compassionate standpoint.
So we are talking in Truth Brigade about fighting disinformation. And we saw some examples of some kinds of different information that's out there. Sometimes we may go into just posts that are advocacy, and there is a difference. In our Truth Brigade posts, where we use the hashtag Truth Brigade, we fight that disinformation rather than just advocating for positions we believe in. There's nothing wrong with advocacy, but our primary mission is to fight disinformation. So we use those two hashtags. Now, I gotta say, I personally, sometimes I go and do some posts that are just advocacy, and I don't use the Truth Brigade thing, and I feel good about those two. So next slide. Oh, now you're gonna have an inside look at how the three of us work on some Truth Brigade posts. And Linda has come up with one, and Candace and I are gonna help her make it better. And we haven't seen it yet. So this is gonna be a surprise.
Big surprise. Well, you don't want that.
No, financial accounting. I did that in grad school, and I don't wanna do that again.
I can tell you all about it. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So I'm going to make this a lot bigger.
Good.
So I made 2 truth sandwiches. One was related to some disinformation about mental health, and the other was the protests. And we kind of talked about the protests already. So I'm going to, if you guys are okay, want to do the mental health one?
Yeah, can you make that,
I'm
you can
going to
make it
make
bigger?
much bigger.
Good. Because I
It's
can't
good.
quite see it. Okay.
How's that?
Okay, so you want me and Candace to see how this works and if we think we could make it better.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so okay, so I like the first sentence, except I would change no matter our race, background, or zip code, we all want to be in control of our lives.
Okay.
Candace, what do you think?
I like that.
Okay. What do you think about the next sentence, Candace?
Those who want to control what other people do with their own bodies falsely
No,
say.
no, nothing is more important.
Okay. You might get some pushback on that one. That is nothing more important than what we, I think I would temper that a little bit. We all want to be in control of our lives.
Oh, how about saying, after we all want to be in control of our lives, we want to control what we do with our own bodies.
Yeah, I like that. We want to, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I might cut to the chase faster on that one and say, claiming that abortion causes mental health issues is just another way for other people to try to control us.
Oh, I like that.
So claiming
That abortion causes mental health issues.
is just a way.
Just another way for people to control, or certain people to try to control our bodies.
Who are these certain people? Call them out.
Yeah, well, that's a good
Okay.
question. The bad guys. I'm used to saying the MAGA Republicans, but it's more than that. You're right.
Well, it is MAGA Republicans or Trump Republicans primarily.
You could say the religious right.
Yeah,
Okay, let's go there.
Is there evidence that abortion causes mental health issues?
No, there's evidence that taking a unwanted birth through, or unwanted pregnancy through birth causes mental health issues.
That's
And
what I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes,
that's
I've
where
got
we're
an
going.
article. So we're saying that what they're saying is wrong. So claiming that abortion causes mental health issues is just another way for the religious right to try and control our bodies.
I think I would say is just misleading.
okay, I like that. I like that.
Okay, so now, just while she's doing that, we do sometimes have to go into really deep editing because we're making it for Twitter. This one, we're not thinking about Twitter right now in that link. We're going to be sharing this one on Facebook, let's say.
Right.
We
So
get a little
just
more space. Go ahead.
before we get, so we were gonna mention the religious right. Are we trying to get rid of that now? Because we just said is just misleading.
Right, for the religious.
What if
right.
we said the religious?
Yeah,
Some-
we're trying to call out bad guys, so we do need to make it a little stronger than that.
Yeah, so claiming that abortion causes mental health issues.
We know that the religious right is the primary force behind abortion. I mean, it's all religious based. So
If
yeah.
if I could interrupt, hi, my name's Michelle, and I what
You know,
occurs, I
Go
I have
ahead
some,
quickly, because we got to get to it. So Michelle, what do you have to say? Do you have a suggestion for wording on this?
yes.
Good.
So the religious right says that abortion causes mental health issues. But the fact is, but studies show that being denied abortion causes mental health issues and permanent damage in a person's life.
I like that.
Yeah,
So-
that's good. I
So
think
I
that,
got the first part. But you said, in fact, studies show.
Right.
I think the
Studies
next
show-
sentence is good as it is.
Well, I just am
Okay.
adding studies show.
Can I jump
Yeah.
in real quick?
well, let's, I'm really concerned about the time. So let's see if just Candace and Linda and I can finish this up. And this will be something maybe we can give to everybody to try and do
Well-
some more work on it. So
In that case, then, I mean, if you don't want anybody else's input, then I'll just say goodnight.
okay.
Well, I was going to suggest it, but I found this story.
Folks, we have a time crunch. Can you just watch us do this and come on Friday to our Truth Sandwich Shop, and we can work more on these. How does that sound?
Yes, because
Okay, Linda?
we'll start with this one. Okay, so I added the studies show, because that was a good add, that being forced to carry a fetus to term can have significant mental health ramifications. So that's kind of the what's the disinformation and who's the bad guy. And then the vision is, let's work towards a compassionate, I use the word compassion that we saw before, world where everyone has the ability to decide when and if they will have a child.
Yeah, or you could change that to whether, when, and with whom to have a family, but either way will work. I mean, I think what this shows is there's no exactly one right answer to do this. The formula is start with a shared value, call out the misinformation, and then end with a shared vision. So you can see it's all about workshopping it back and forth and putting it in your own words and saying what's meaningful to you. So that's just what we wanted to show you. And we do only have 5 minutes. So, and what I wanted, if Linda, if you can stop sharing, I wanted to make sure that everyone gets to see these resources. That
Okay.
we, for them, hold on. Back to it. Okay, so let me share. And again, we will send out these slides, but there's some great messaging resources, and we heard about some others tonight too. There's some memos, there's an article about avoiding the use of the term choice. The National Women's Law Center has a messaging guide. There's an additional guide to rights-based messaging. There's that Someone You Love toolkit. Planned Parenthood has a conversation guide, and we will share all of those with you. And the other thing we wanted to share was the membership link. You can sign up for Truth Brigade Illinois. You can sign up for National Truth Brigade. You can, and so all the links here. We have a Facebook group you can join. We have a welcome information document that gives you links to all sorts of resources. And then, like Edo just mentioned, every other Friday this summer, we're doing, and this Friday is one of them, we're doing True Sandwich Shops from 11 to 12:30, where we get together with whoever wants to join us, and we work on tweets and true sandwiches. And if people have technical issues about how to do all of this, we welcome discussions about that. So we welcome you all to join us. Ada, do you want to, any final thoughts? Do we have questions in the agenda that I'm going to stop sharing that we want to address?
Were there any questions? I know Kelly's saying, please normalize using the word abortion to friends.
Yep.
So that it's not like a bad word.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
And one of the
Go
groups
ahead.
are having people share their abortion stories, which is very powerful. People, so it's people you know, people you love have had an abortion, and they tell their story about why and when and how it happened. And it does normalize it. That's exactly what we're going for, Kelly.
Do we have a link to Friday's Truth Sandwich Shop, or will that come in the follow-up email?
It will come in the follow-up email, but I should be able to open it.
Okay, so I know it's frustrating because probably all of you had ideas on how to change what we started with. And that's what we do on every other Friday. We get together, and sometimes there's 5 of us, sometimes 10. It's a small group, but we actually hammer away at coming up with some specific truth sandwiches and really do some wordsmithing of them. So if you would like to work some more on that, please come on Friday. And also, you know, maybe you can't come, but maybe you can see what we post on our group and in Facebook or on our Twitter feed, and then take what we've done and tweak it, make it your own, and put it up on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, because we need to get it out there. Then amplifying. Who feels like they're good at amplifying people's posts? That's an important part of it. Amplifying can mean just sharing. It can mean commenting. It can mean liking, if you're talking about Facebook. With Twitter, and it's particularly powerful with Twitter because we can actually track that, about how many impressions we have. You can comment on something. You can also just retweet it, or you can retweet it with your own message and put our hashtags in there. Again,
We got a question that I think is worth a talk is, who are we trying to convince with these personal appeals? And I think, again, I don't think the people who are on the far religious right, who are convinced that, that abortion is a sin, are going to be reached by these personal appeals. But there are a ton of people in the middle. And if you can focus it on compassion and the idea that that there's someone you care about who may need this, even if you don't personally want to have it. The fact that both Ireland and Argentina, that are Catholic countries, recently legalized abortion with this kind of compassion, really convinces me that that's the approach to take. I'm happy to be in marches saying, keep your laws off my body. And there is, I get that, I carry those signs. But when we're on social media trying to reach the people who might be swayed one way or the other, to convince them that we need to protect this right, I think this messaging approach can be effective.
I think the compassion element that comes across in that video is so strong. And I'm thinking, I want to write a post where I would say something about what would I do if my daughter had an ectopic pregnancy and was denied an abortion and would die. How could I live with myself for not having made it possible for her to have that? Somehow I think I could make a truth sandwich about that, because that part particularly really got me. So anyhow, Candace and Linda, anything more?
No, other than to thank our speakers, who were great, and thank everybody for coming. And we have to keep pushing, because, for probably many of us on this call, it's not going to necessarily directly impact us, but man, it's going to have such horrible impacts on a lot of people. So.
And, we're being encouraged to keep the chatter online going about abortion, the progressive, positive information on that. So let's do that. And please come to other events that we have. I'd like it if some of you could show up on Friday. We'll make some more truth sandwiches.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for
Thanks,
coming.
everybody.
You guys rock.
Thanks, Marcie.
And we have so much more for people to learn, and we're going to all learn together. So please come to later things. And Marcie, I think you had a question about, I think in some places where abortion is just totally excluded, that
It's not that I had a question. I'm just trying to frame it because, okay, yeah, I guess an excision of an ectopic pregnancy would be
it stops, the life of the
abortion,
fetus.
but it's it's like we shouldn't talk about it in that way, because then then again that's what the right will say, it's an abortion, so I mean instead we should talk about it as a medical emergency, and it's a non-viable, it's not even a fetus yet, it's an embryo, or depending on how old it is, it may even be just a zygote.
Right.
So it's not even, you're not even talking fetus. So it's like, it's usually 2 or 3 weeks into the pregnancy, and it's in the fallopian tube. The fallopian tube bursts. There's no way that ectopic is going to be viable, and it's going to make the woman bleed to death.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just that some people don't know that if you forbid all abortions, that you could be forbidding giving someone the necessary medical essential treatment that they need. That's
Yeah, I guess that's the way how to get that out in it.
Okay, so that's why you're talking about it and framing it as an abortion, so then people understand. Because to me it's just I thought in my mind the other side would use it as, we can't terminate that ectopic because it's an abortion, we can't do that. And so it's like, so that's why what I thought the framing was, I was thinking of it on just the opposite way, not as if we don't say that, then people won't understand that it's that this is something that is also included, which is a medical emergency. Okay, now I get it.
Okay, well, folks, this is a topic that we could go on all night with, and I think probably, I know I need a little sleep sometime tonight, and maybe some of you do too, but please join us again as we work on some more truth sandwiches for this. And thank you so much for coming.
You guys rock.
And everybody.